what to do when things go wrong. This is going to kind of be more of a serious segment. I'm going to talk about scandals. And I'm going to go over 3 scandals that I've had in my career at different stages of my career, and how I could have done things a little bit better earlier in my career and what I think I did well later in my career. Now, I'm going to give you an example of something that I did wrong. I'm going to give you an example that somebody else did that was wrong, but I was involved in anyway because, the buck stops here, right? And I'm also going to give you an example of a time where I was accused of something that I did not do. So those are the kind of the 3 categories that you're likely to fall under. You mess up, somebody else messes up in your group, or somebody accuses you of messing up and you didn't really mess up. It's a lie. But in all 3 of those situations, it's important to remember that we're teachers in the world, and the world is in our classroom, and the world is in our community, and in the world, we're made up of human beings, and human beings are prone to error and make mistakes. We make mistakes, other people make mistakes, and there are misunderstandings. And so if we all just calm down and understand that nobody's perfect, it gets us through these tough times a lot more effectively. So the first thing I want to talk about is early in my career when somebody else made a mistake. I don't want to give away too many details because really no need to do that, but we had a parent group and we had somebody who was embezzling money. And it was a really bad situation because even though it wasn't my fault, like I wasn't the one taking the money, nobody came out of this looking good. It wasn't something that was like, oh, well, at least I wasn't stealing money. It was bad for everybody. Nobody felt good at the end of it. We had to make changes moving forward to make sure that stuff didn't happen again. So it was just a really unfortunate situation where a parent was behind on their bills and, they thought they could just borrow a little bit of money and pay it back over time, and ended up borrowing more and more, and it ended up being a lot by the time they got caught. And the police got involved, and it was just a really bad situation. At that point in my career, I did not handle things particularly well. I didn't stay calm. I didn't understand that sometimes people make mistakes. I was very accusatory. I was very upset and angry, and I reacted very hastily and kind of went off the rails. And that's not at all what you're supposed to do. All of those things are probably the opposite of what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to stay calm. You're supposed to take a step back. You're supposed to empathize and try to have some understanding. That doesn't mean that there's no consequences to what took place, but you need to understand that people make mistakes, and sometimes people have good intentions, and they just get misguided. And also, sometimes we make mistakes too, so we should say, hey, I make mistakes, you make mistakes. Now, that doesn't mean there's not going to be consequences again, and there definitely were consequences. But I think what we did do well in that situation was change policy moving forward. How can we prevent this from happening again? So we created a new policy in that booster club where we had to have dual signatories on every check to make sure that those were going well. No more credit cards or anything like that. Like, it has to all be done with checks, and 2 officers have to sign each check. And whenever we're taking in money, we have dual ledgers and 2 people count the money at all times. Nobody's left alone with the money, so that money can disappear. And that just holds everybody accountable. And with those policies in place, it's much harder for somebody to successfully take money, and so they're probably not going to do it because they're going to get caught. And the problem that we had in the past is that, it was too easy. We didn't have good policy in place. And so it was an environment that, sort of, I wouldn't say encouraged, but allowed that to happen to where it's like, well, nobody's going to notice. And nobody did notice for a very long time. Probably throw in a disclaimer at some point in here saying that, I'm not a lawyer, and that, don't take this to be legal advice. If you're in trouble, get your own legal counsel and that kind of stuff. But I'm just going to share with you my experiences and what I think I did well and what I think I could have improved on. So the next thing I want to talk about is a time where I made a mistake. So one time I had this hotshot freshman that came into my program, really good violinist, doing very, very well. And of course, when you're doing well, sometimes your parents are kind enough to upgrade your instrument. So he comes into my class and gets a new violin, and of course this violin has no fine tuners, and he has no idea how to tune without fine tuners, and he's struggling, and we're tuning, and it's like, first violins, we're wildly out of tune. What's going on? And okay, let's just hear first violin. So just play your A's. So they play their A's, like, well, that's not in tune at all. So I just go down the line, player A, player A, player A. Hey, what's going on here? Let's tune it. You're a mile flat. So I start just really struggling to tune the pegs, and it's like, hey, you got to get fine tuners. You're obviously not comfortable with the pegs. You got to get some fine tuners. And the way I said it wasn't very kind, and the kid was high achieving and perfectionist and all that sort of type, and really took it harshly, and really had a hard time with that. And I took a step back and said, you know what, that was too far. I could have handled that a lot better. So when you're wrong, you admit to it, and said, hey, the next day in class, I apologized to the whole class. I apologized to that student directly and said, hey, listen, this is not the way we're supposed to treat each other. We're supposed to have more understanding, compassion. We're trying to have more of an inclusive familial environment here, and that's not the way to do it. I'm very sorry for what I did. I could have handled that a lot better. I'm a human. I make mistakes, and please forgive me, just as I will forgive y'all when you make mistakes too. So, we were able to move forward, and that student was able to, recover from that, and, again, tried to restore that trust with the group and have some transparency and again, actually make changes moving forward. And so, again, what are the things that we can change moving forward? Well, if you're going to show up with an instrument without fine tuners, you need to get that approved by me first. We need to make sure that you're comfortable tuning with the pegs first before you remove those fine tuners, or before you get an instrument that doesn't have fine tuners. If you get a new instrument, make them put fine tuners on it. Get a Whitner tail piece, something with fine tuners until you get comfortable, and then we'll talk about getting them off. So later in my teaching career, in the middle of class, I get pulled off the podium. Hey, come with me. That's not good. I don't think there's ever been a time where you get pulled off the podium and you walk down to the principal's office and they hand you a trophy or something. You win an award. That's usually a bad thing. So even on the way, I was like, hey, am I in trouble? They're like, no, everything's great. You're going to be fine. And so I show up, and I didn't even know I was being interrogated. It's just like I start getting lectured right off the bat. It's like, sometimes we just have to look at our instructional practices and know where to make changes. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And sometimes we gotta be willing to grow and do things that are uncomfortable. I'm like, okay, I'm with you, and not really get into the point. And then finally, it came out that they had this like anonymous complaint system where people can submit things, and they don't have to worry about any sort of repercussions or like any lashback from saying whatever they want to say, airing whatever grievance they want. And this grievance happened to read, it was absolutely anonymous. Nobody knows who wrote it. It was something like to the effect of, hey, I'm worried because my favorite teacher is really going off the rails, and I'm worried that if he continues down this path, that they're going to fire him, and then I won't have my favorite teacher at the school anymore. The administrator was like, so what are they talking about? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I have no idea. And so in this situation, I was able to remain calm and just kind of see through all the nonsense. And I was just kind of taking a step back and just be like, I'm not really sure what they're talking about. It's like very vague. And I'm not just going to sit here, you're not my priest. I'm not going to sit here and confess every little thing that I've done. It's like, in third period one day, I checked my phone. I checked a text message in the middle of class. That probably wasn't very professional. A couple weeks ago, my daughter was very sick, and, she threw up on me before work one day, and I had a stain on my shirt, and, I taught the whole day with a stain on my shirt. That probably wasn't the best teaching practice either. And, I could have just gone down the list of every terrible thing I've done, and that's probably not a good strategy, because in those situations when you're talking to an administrator, they're not there to be your buddy. They're there to create documentation and make everything that you say part of the public record. So I live in the United States of America, and in this country we have something called the Fifth Amendment, and you don't have to volunteer any self-incriminating information. You have the right to remain silent. So that's what I chose to do. I just said, hey, I'm sorry, I can't help you here. I have no idea what they're talking about. And, you have the same right as I do, well, if you live here anyway. You don't have to volunteer any information. Now, if you did something really bad, if it was the situation prior to that, it's like, well, I got after a kid that didn't have fine tuners, and, the kid was a high achieving kid and was really sensitive, and I knew that going in, and I could have done that a lot better. Well, then, just have some transparency and just say that. It's not a big deal. But if they're just fishing for stuff, you don't want to say something stupid and then they write it down, and all of a sudden it's a huge deal and you're on administrative leave or whatever. If you feel like you're overly emotional, you're being investigated and somebody files a false complaint against you, or maybe it's a little true but they twist it around or something like that, you can just tell them, if you feel like you're getting emotional and you're not in the best state of mind to answer their questions, you can just tell them, be like, listen, I'm really upset right now and I don't want to talk right now. Can we have this conversation later? And that will give you some time to take a step back, and you can do some things in the meantime. Like, you can talk to somebody else about it and say, hey, look, this happened. What do you think about it? You can talk to a close friend. You can talk to your spouse or significant other. You can talk to your mom or dad. You can talk to your therapist. You could talk to a lawyer if you think you might be having legal troubles. There's a lot of people you can talk to and just really kind of work out these ideas before it becomes part of the public record. So don't be in a rush to incriminate yourself or say something ridiculous, because they can take something that you say, and if you say it the wrong way and they write it down, well, that can turn into a big deal. So you have to be very careful. In this day and age, we live in a very litigious society, and unfortunately, there are some bad actors out there. I definitely recommend that you have some sort of legal service or liability insurance or something to that effect. I have something through TMEA where I pay just a little bit of money every year. It's like $30, and it's excellent coverage. I haven't personally used it. I think that's why it's so cheap. It's because people rarely use it, but I've had friends that have used the service, and it worked out very well for them. So definitely try to find something like that. They're like prepaid legal services where you pay a little bit a month that aren't as cheap as TMEA, but they might cover you inside, outside the classroom too. So definitely get something so that if you need legal representation, you don't feel like you have to spend an arm and a leg to get it, and you can just talk to an attorney anytime you need to, and you're not going to dig yourself into a hole. Again, you got to think about the world we live in today, and there are bad actors out there, and there are people that, that might want to make a buck off of you, or they might want to harm you in some way because they have some kind of grudge against you or whatever. Their kid didn't get first chair, and so they're going to end your career, something to that effect. It's happened before. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm just saying this, for you to be prepared, so that you have that option if you need it. And again, don't get in a hurry. Don't rush. Stay calm. Talk when you're ready to talk and not a moment before. Don't incriminate yourself. They can take anything that you say out of context, and it could show up in a court transcript or something like that. It's just not a great idea. If you feel like you need to have representation while they're interrogating you, that's your right. Well, at least in this country, that's your right as well. So take advantage of your rights, because if you don't, you're not gonna get any extra points in court for it. It's like, well, I could have used my Fifth Amendment right. Well, I could have had representation there. They don't care about any of that. The system that we have here in this country was developed for a reason, because they don't want innocent people to be convicted of things. And if you're innocent, don't do anything stupid so that they think otherwise. Just be very calm. Don't talk when you're emotional. Take a step back. Talk to somebody else first and work through it. Get a lawyer if you need one. This is, again, not to scare you, but you're going to have some kind of scandal in your career at some point. So just be prepared and, understand that you don't have to talk when you're upset. Next episode, again, these are when things go wrong, so not going to be happy and joyous for every of them, but the next two segments are not going to be quite as severe as the scandal segment. But in the next one, we're going to talk about toxic environments. What happens if maybe you took a new job and things aren't going well, or maybe for some reason the environment in your classroom has gotten really toxic. What do you do about it when that goes wrong? So we'll see you in the next segment.